Make that 5 wins in a row for the New York Mets as they beat the Los Angeles Dodgers in their series opener. Brett Baty made his 2023 debut and did get an RBI knock. It was a great day for the offense altogether, and the Mets found a way to pull out a absolute nail-biter. We'll discuss all of it on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/MLB60 and use the code MLB60 for 60% off plus free shipping. Now, this was all about Brett Baty's debut on Monday. Obviously, we saw him last season with a little cup of coffee, but now it feels like he is here to stay, and that's why there was a lot of anticipation heading into this West Coast game. And I will say, as a podcaster on the East Coast, don't love the West Coast games. Gotta say it, but hey, here we are, okay? The Mets can do it, so can I. I think it's going to take most of the show just to get through what happened here, and it really begins with David Peterson. He was uneven, is the only way I can describe it, because on one hand, you give up 6 runs, okay? That's never good. But he got through 6 innings, something we haven't seen a lot of Mets starters do to save this bullpen, and he faced off against a really good Dodgers lineup, and Freddie Freeman simply killed him, and Freddie Freeman has killed a lot of Mets pitchers over the years. But it began the bottom of the first, solo shot, Freddie Freeman, there you go, 1-0, Mets down. Top of the second, though, they got back up, they took a lead, Daniel Vogelbach hits a 2-run homer. Suddenly, you have a fresh face come into the lineup, and Brett Baty, a guy that's supposed to add some power to the left side because the Mets weren't getting a lot of power from the left side, and all of a sudden, Daniel Vogelbach hits a home run. Funny how that works out. So, Mets take a lead, but that was short-lived. Peterson had what I consider his worst inning in the bottom of the second, because it wasn't Freeman killing him. Max Muncy got a knock. Trace Thompson got a knock. So he had 2 runners on. He gets to 2 outs, and he gives up a double to Austin Wynns, a catcher that the Dodgers just picked up off the scrap heap. And that's how you lose the lead. That, to me, was the worst inning for David Peterson, to give up 3 hits and to give up a hit in that spot. I thought that was probably his worst batter of the game. But I'll give him some credit, He found his way through the start despite all the runs he allowed. So, kept the Mets close, I guess you could say, against a good lineup. Not to give him too much credit, but we'll get to that a little more. 4th inning, though, the Mets rallied. Okay, so the Mets are able to come right back into it and give him a lead. Francisco Lindor hit by a pitch. Pete Alonso gets a base hit. Jeff McNeil had a great game. He's been struggling. 3 hits. Amazing to see. He was able to rifle one the other way to score Lindor. Mark Canha grounded out to advance McNeil to second and Alonso to third. Vogelbach comes up. He gets a ground out that brings in a run. Suddenly the Mets are up 4-3. Then Brett Baty comes up. This was his one hit of the day, and it was a fantastic at-bat. Falls behind 0-2. Fouls off a couple of tough pitches. He takes a pitch that might have caught a little bit of the zone as I look back at the pit tracks, but still, it was called a ball. Fouled off another tough pitch. Then 7th pitch of the at-bat, he takes a fastball that was up and in. It would have been a strike, but, upper half inside, a type of pitch that Francisco Alvarez has been striking out on. And it was 98 miles per hour from Dustin May. Gets enough of a barrel on it dumps it into the outfield, gets the single when you need that hit with 2 outs, runners in scoring position. That drives in another 5-3 Mets. Peterson actually went 1-2-3 in the bottom of the fourth, so that was a really nice inning for him. There was a point there where Peterson actually retired 9 in a row, got the first 2 outs of the 5th inning as well. But then Mookie Betts came up. He gets a base hit. Freddie Freeman home run ties the game. So let's just say instead of that base hit, he gets Betts out. Maybe the game's different. Maybe in the top half of the inning without a runner on, not pitching out of the stretch, Peterson navigates the start better. That's why I'm saying it was uneven, because in a lot of respects, I felt like he threw the ball pretty well. He was still getting swings and misses. He still got the 6 strikeouts, but gave up 3 home run balls. So it's still a bad start ultimately. Buck, though, had a confidence because the pitch count was low to send him back out for the 6th, and then Max Muncy got him. So that was the moment where you can't, in good conscience, call it a good start, because it's not just Freeman that killed him for 3 of the runs and 2 homers. It's Max Muncy that went yard on him as well, and he coughed up a lead again. But there was still a lot of drama in this one as the Mets rallied back into it. The bullpen was good, and they find a way to win the ball game and to advance this now to a 5-game winning streak. This is looking a lot more like that Mets team that won 101 games last year, and that team didn't have a prospect as exciting as Brett Baty. I want to go through his other at-bats and what we saw from him defensively in the field, and of course, how the Mets were able to take this one. Before we get to any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by our new sponsor, So Rare, a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. So Rare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of the leaderboards have a chance to win a variety of rewards, including VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars. Prizes may vary depending on the competition. If you want to get in on the action, head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft their team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Now, the New York Mets were able to rally again in the 7th inning to take a lead. Tomas Nido leads things off with a great at-bat where he worked a full count, gets a base hit. Brandon Nimmo had a 3-hit day, but they weren't all far, okay? This one, infield single. Get on any way you can. You got 2 runners on. Starling Marte lines a base hit to the outfield, loads them up. Francisco Lindor comes up, pitching change, and guess what happens? Bases loaded balk. We love it. We love it. That gives the Mets a lead. That ties the game. Lindor gave them a lead by grounding out. And then Pete Alonso comes up, continues to stay hot. He gets an RBI hit to give the Mets some insurance. And that was really the ball game. That put it to 8-6, the final score. But Brett Baty had an opportunity to blow it wide open. In that 7th inning, a couple of walks paired with that hit by Alonso, loaded the bases. Baty comes up, again, 2 outs. They grabbed the lefty to face him, and he falls behind 0-2. Didn't strike out, give him credit for that, but he flew out, and that ended the inning. Now, in the 6th inning, an inning prior, Baty had another opportunity with runners on. They intentionally walked Tommy Pham to get to Brett Baty, so that put the Mets in a situation where they could have gone to Eduardo Escobar to face the lefty. They did not. They didn't go to Escobar to face the lefty later in the game in that 7th inning as well. So a couple of things I find interesting about that. For one, Baty getting the opportunity to play through all of it. They didn't pull him until the 9th inning for defensive purposes to put in Louis Guillorme. So that tells you what they think about Baty's bat when Escobar is supposed to be better from the right side, but we've seen the way he swung the bat this season. Also, though, the Dodgers grabbing lefties to face him, That, for one, shows the weakness in Baty's game. He's going to rake against righties and against lefties. You're going to see the OPS dip a little bit. Here's a guy that could potentially have an OPS over 900 against right-handed pitching, and you're hoping that against lefties, he keeps that OPS around 750. You'd feel good about that as a rookie. So these are things he has to work through. I would love it if he was playing every day, but we do know teams are going to try to be wary of him, and that's just a sign of respect, honestly. So even though he goes 1 for 4 on the game, I thought his at-bats were mostly competitive. It looks a lot better, in my opinion, than what we've been seeing from Francisco Alvarez. And he made an amazing play. He had to have a really strong throw, his back of the infield dirt, able to gun down the runner. So I thought that was another really good sign. And then as far as how the Mets were able to win it when it came to the pitching side, holding on to that lead, Brooks Raley really deserves a lot of the credit. Got, some big outs, 5 of them. Goes 1, 2, 3 in the 7th, stays on to face Freddie Freeman in the 8th. Doesn't get him out, gave up a hit to him, worked around a double from James Outman, but got 2 of the 3 outs. Then Drew Smith came on to face Miguel Vargas and blew him away on 3 pitches. So nice day at the office, for Drew to strand 2 and get a big strikeout. Then Adam Ottavino came on in the 9th. Brandon Nimmo made an exceptional catch in that 9th inning up against the wall. What he has done defensively, just in his career, but particularly the last 2 seasons, which is that culmination of all the work, it shows why he's worth every single penny of that contract extension. He has played a fantastic center field. With him in center, Lindor at short, and even McNeil at second, the Mets are so strong up the middle, and they've gotten just great defense from this team. Even Pete Alonso is picking it over at first base. Marte's been great in right, Canna in left. These are the little things that allow the Mets to pile series victory after series victory. It's what we saw last year. Sometimes they're not the flashiest team in baseball, but you know what? I will take it if you're putting W's in that win column. Now, you look at the offense overall in this one, 14 hits, but the thing that jumps out the most to me, Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil each had 3. McNeil, that's exciting because he's been struggling. Nimmo and Alonso, it's a continuation. If we look at this 5-game winning streak, what you're going to see is OPS is well over 1,000 for a couple of guys. Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. These guys have been carrying this team through this winning streak. Jeff McNeil getting hot is going to be a great addition as well. You throw in the new contributions, a little spark plug of a Brett Baty. Daniel Vogelback has been drawing his walks. He finally hit for some power today. We'll see if that continues. Tommy Pham has been giving great at-bats, man. What can I say? Pham has been good. So that's another piece that the Mets have in this lineup. Canna's been struggling a bit, but Marte has been great pretty much all season long. So you're looking at a lineup now with Brett Baty, and there's a lot less holes in it. You look 1 through 9, you see Tomas Nido 9th. That's really it, right? Because right now, the way the Mets slated it today, Baty was batting 8th. You had Vogelback batting 7th, Canna 6th, McNeil 5th, and then your typical 4 atop the lineup. It's a team that is really deep, that can string hits together, that can make pitchers work. Dustin May was great all season. Not today, he wasn't. Today, going up against the Mets, he really couldn't get outs in a lot of different instances where he was just struggling to put guys away, struggling with the command a little bit, and the Mets were piling on their hits. They were getting into good counts. They were getting the knocks they needed. They were fouling off tough pitches. They are just being the grinding Mets that we know and love. And now you got to try to grind away one more game. Okay, you got Tyler McGill on the mound for the second one. Can you steal one against Clayton Kershaw? That's going to be interesting. I'm going to be really fascinated to see if Baty's back in the lineup against a lefty. That would be a real, a great kind of foreshadowing of what would be to come when it comes to playing time. So we'll see what they do with that. But now you know that when Max Scherzer takes the ball on Wednesday, he's got a chance to win the series. And that's an incredible thing for the Mets to pull off in this game where, you didn't like the pitching matchup of Peterson versus Dustin May when you came into it, and they found a way to rise above it. So what we're going to do next, though, to close out this show, We have yet to discuss the roster move the Mets made to put Brett Baty up, so I want to go through that a little bit and really just kind of put into context where we are with this roster as the Mets just basically punted on a decision that's still going to have to get made at some point in the very near future. We're going to get to all of that in just a minute. Before we do, though, another word from our sponsors. So Jose Butto was in fact sent down, but it was not to accommodate Brett Baty, as we hypothesized a bit on yesterday's show. I thought they could have gone with one short in the bullpen for a day or two to try to delay this decision. Instead of doing that, Tim LeCastro ends up on the injured list. They end up recalling Edwin Uceda, which is always a funny way to phrase it because they say recall because that's what happens when a guy has been in the majors before. Yet, I never recall Uceda pitching in a Mets uniform. Regardless, he is now the 8th man in that pen. They were able to stay away from some of their guys in this one. So, you got David Robertson fresh going into tomorrow. John Curtis, another one that's fresh. Then you got Uceda and Denny Reyes. So that's probably your pen for the second game of this series. And that's why you had to do it. You couldn't just option Butto for Baty because you need arms. I mean, even in this game where the Mets got 6 from their starter, you still have Brooks Raley now burned because he got 5 outs through a lot of pitches. Adam Ottavino, how much are they going to go to him? Are they going to pitch him 3 games in 4 days? Probably not. So now Ottavino likely burned until the final game of this series. Drew Smith's probably fine because he only faced 1 batter. So imagine he's good to go and probably the second high leverage guy to Robertson. But you need as many arms as you can get in that bullpen. So that brings us to the decision that was made, which is Tim LeCastro going on the injured list with back spasms. Another kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, convenient IL stint. But for now, it gives the Mets the flexibility to hang on to him, to have Baty acclimate on the roster, to see how he fits with the Vogelback, with Pham, with Escobar. How are all these guys going to get their time? And does that lead you to make another decision? Is there a trade that can be made where Escobar is sent to a different team, which would probably suck for team morale because he's clearly a big, big leader on this club. And that what makes me kind of hesitant to think that the Mets are going to make a deal like that. Or do you trade a Daniel Vogelback? That's the other option that's on the table, where you just say, all right, as much as he is succeeding at getting on base, power hasn't been there, although the home run today probably keeps him out of trade rumors for a little bit longer. But you just run into this situation with the Mets roster where, to accommodate the veterans who have guaranteed MLB salaries and the young players, you're kind of stuck. And that's what we discussed on yesterday's show, too. So now LeCastro's on the IL. When he's ready to come back, can you put him on this roster, or does he just eventually get the DFA? Because I don't know how you do it unless you move Escobar or Vogelback or even a Tommy Pham. But again, Pham's swinging a good bat, so I don't know where they go. I do believe that ultimately the best version of the New York Mets, just strictly based on a player performance basis here. Nothing to look at some of those other factors. But to me, it's Eduardo Escobar is the roster casualty you should get to. Baty fills that need, right? He can come up here and be your everyday third baseman. It'll be good to still have a Vogelback on this team, as far as that DH option. And I think he is giving you much better at bats than you've been getting from Escobar and is probably a more valuable player for this season. I still don't believe it happens, though. So I think LeCastro is still the guy, but for now, they held on to him. So good on the Mets for doing that. Now, one last thing I want to discuss before we close. Buck Showalter is weird with his quotes, man. I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this one, but I don't like the way he has been treating the Mets prospects with how he's handled the media, what he's been saying. And to say that Brett Baty was called up because the Mets have an injury is just, I hate when a guy, and I get it. I get it. This is Buck Showalter. He's a great baseball mind. But when he essentially, is mocking our intelligence with an answer that he says, where he is just kind of flippant with a ridiculous response. To say that Baty was called up in response to LeCastro going down when Baty's promotion was broken by reporters before the game on Sunday and LeCastro played in that game, it is laughable. And I don't know what he's trying to accomplish, if he's trying to keep Baty modest. I really don't know what mind games he's playing, but he's not fooling anyone, and so it's a little bit frustrating. But I digress on that. The Mets are playing great baseball, 5 in a row. Let's see if they can keep it up, win one of the next 2 against the Dodgers. That would be probably the series victory of the season. So we'll see if they get there. That's going to be all, though, for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day for you everydayers. We'll be up late tomorrow night as well, breaking down another West Coast game. I can't wait till my head hits the pillow tonight. We'll get to that. I'll get to that. We'll get to that. I will get to that in a minute here. Make sure, if you're not followed, rate and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter. And also you can follow the show at Locked On Mets.